in our first panel discussion today. The topic is Challenges of Legacy NEXGEN versus First Timers. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome our esteemed speakers on stage. Please welcome Mr. Rishabh Shroff, partner, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. I would request our speakers to please take a seat on the stage, starting from the far end of the stage to the left. So I request you to please, again, give a huge round of applause to Mr. Rishabh Shroff. Joining him on stage is Mr. Suraj Saharan, co-founder, Delivery. A round of applause for Mr. Saharan. Please welcome on stage Mr. Abhishek Chakraborty, CEO, DTDC Express. Like I said, keep the applause coming. Please welcome Mr. Pranav Kapoor, founder and creative director, P. Kapoor Fragrances. Please welcome Ankush Grover, co-founder, Rebel Foods. And moderating this discussion is Ajita Shashidhar, editor-at-large, Fortune India. Please give her a huge round of applause. She's the sole lady on stage who's going to handle all these men. Another huge round of applause for Ajita. I'm going to hand it over to Ajita, and someone's going to give her a mic so that she can settle down and pose some tough questions to these young men.
Welcome once again to Fortune India 40 Under 40 Awards. So as you all know, 40 Under 40 Awards is all about celebrating entrepreneurship celebrating some of the most dynamic entrepreneurs of India, Inc. So here we go, and a lot of the entrepreneurs who are part of our list not only run successful startups, but also we have a sparkling list of entrepreneurs who belong to legacy businesses. They are the new generation of legacy businesses. So we thought it is just great to have a discussion around the challenges of entrepreneurship for entrepreneurs who are not only running interesting startups, but are also part of legacy enterprises. So let's find out from them as to what kind of challenges and opportunities they see in this world of entrepreneurship. So thank you all of you for making it to the panel, and many of you have come from outside of Mumbai, so thank you so much for your time. So, Rishabh, I would like to start with you. So being the next generation of an old family-run business, I'm assuming must be a lot of responsibilities because you're inheriting a legacy. So, and you are part of a 109-year-old legal firm. So it'll be just, if you could take us through as to, you would have grown up in an era where running a bootstrap startup is kind of considered cool. So what really played in your mind when you decided to take up your family business? And, did you always know that you would take up this business, or was it, what really transpired is what we would like to know.
Thank you. Always a stress of starting first, I think, so guys, bear with me. It's a very apt question, and I'm very happy that my father also is here as we look at this. He completes 42 years running our firm today, to the very day. So I think we were just discussing as we were, chatting about this session that, what has 42 years also meant for you in terms of seeing how the business has evolved, and, some of the clients that, Dad used to work with, the generation change already has happened for those families, like Keshav, for example, he worked with your father, now working with you, and Shashwat, etc. So we ourselves as a family are seeing our clients also change in our business as well. So some of the conversations that we have about things like governance, about succession, working with professionals in the business, new industries, new economies, very different from what it was 42 years ago. And which is what I think really excites me. Some of the stuff that we are doing right now are sort of happening for the first time in India in terms of new practice areas, new businesses, new ventures. You've got so many exciting startups on a panel with new innovative business models. And I think that's what excites me about the kind of work I do. So in our own business, we're also working on reinventing ourselves every generation. So I would say in my grandfather's era, it was more about the practice of law. What dad in his 42 years has done is make the business of law also very interesting, about running, a large, we have 1,000 lawyer law firm now, running it like a business. And what I want to leave, hopefully leave my legacy as we take into the age of AI, sort of, robo lawyers and, working with a chat GPT lawyer or whatever it may be. So every generation, I think, is reinventing what the practice of law and the business of law means. So to answer your question, I think that what excites me. And we think of ourselves as a professionally run family business. We have about 200 partners, out of which only 4 or 5 are family. So by definition, working a lot of external, talent in our business as well. So, and many have been in the firm 20, 30 years. So I think we're doing something and retaining our professionals in the business as well. So we can chat more as we go along. But thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Moving on to Pranav. Pranav, you are part of a eighth generation of a legacy business out of Kannauj, and you're into the business of making perfumes. And your family always was happy making, to be in the B2B business. And you are taking the legacy forward by entering the D2C segment and getting into perfume tourism, making India, Kannauj, the perfume destination of India. So it'll be interesting to hear from you as to what made you kind of get into this business. Were you really prepared to do this?
Growing up, I really wasn't. My family nobody ever pressured us to join the business. We've all been out because Kannauj is a small town, so everybody's been to boarding schools, everybody lived outside. So there was no pressure of any kind to, you need to take this forward. Which I think is great because if you're forced to do something, you may not value it as much. Coming back to the business was something that just organically happened with me. And when I did, the challenges obviously were where nobody knew me in Kannauj because I spent all my life outside. And most people in India only heard of Kannauj when 130 crores were found in cash. And that's what made the news. But so I think the first thing was the skepticism of the team that this guy who can barely put together 3 words in Hindi or write it properly is going to come and tell us what to do. But yeah, I mean, I faced a little bit of brunt with that. But the whole point is that how do you take something that has been there for such a long time and bring it up to speed, A, in a tech-driven world, and B, how do you take it to a global stage for general consumers? The business people always knew about Kannauj because we had all the international companies coming down and, been exporting since the 50s. But Indians themselves didn't know about where Kannauj was. So that is what perfume tourism, that's where the whole thought for perfume tourism came, and to basically set up a D2C brand where now consumers could get part of the legacy that Kannauj, being the perfume capital that invented fragrance much before France could spell perfume. So that's what basically fueled
Your family okay with?
They were very happy to have me back. And yeah, I mean, they were pretty excited about it. And they're very easy, actually. Family is very easy. So the whole pressure and the challenge was me versus my brain, nothing external.
Thank you. So let me go to a startup founder now. Suraj, if I may ask you, how is it to start a business from scratch? You literally started on a blank slate. And, a little bit of reading up I did about you was like you first started it was a hyperlocal delivery business, and when hyperlocal was quite unheard of. And, you and your co-founder would deliver books, and that's where the idea came. So if you could tell us was it unnerving? What really was playing in your mind?
So I guess when we started, it wasn't really unnerving because, there's an age when you're young, you're ready to take risks. You don't think so much about what's going to happen. But as you go into it and as you try to build it, you realize how difficult it is, and especially building a logistics business like ours, which is operationally extremely intensive, very, very people intensive. Trying to build a business like that, you feel like, you tend to sort of keep thinking whether you took the right decision. But then, I think keep your head down, keep executing, things will fall in place. We started out as a food delivery company. So, what you see today as Zomato delivery was something that we started out with. Coincidentally, Dipinder and Pankaj from Zomato were good friends from where we worked before. So, in one of the casual conversations in their office, Sahil and I, we said, why don't we set up food delivery? Because that was a need. A lot of restaurants weren't delivering food. But we said we'll set it up independently. We won't do it as part of Zomato. We'll do it as an independent company. Started there, very quickly realized we had a lot of spare capacity in terms of bandwidth with the riders between lunch and dinner, because lunch and dinner are the busy hours for food. And this is when e-commerce was just taking off, 2011. So to fill that gap, we started doing e-commerce deliveries locally within Gurgaon. The feedback we got was very, very positive. The companies we worked with said, can you please expand this in other cities for us? Because at that point, COD was a concept unheard of. And it was the only driver for e-commerce at that point. People were not comfortable using credit cards or debit cards online. And so COD was the absolute holy grail of e-commerce. And so we realized that if e-commerce has to grow the way it is being bet on, a lot of people were investing behind Flipkart. There was a company called Let's Buy. There was a company called Urban Touch, Healthcart. These were some of the early companies that were seeing a lot of VC funding. And we said, look, if they have to grow, they need a logistics partner, which will be able to do COD, deliveries, and remit cash, and reconcile on a real-time basis. And so that's where we sort of changed track, and we said, let's shut this food thing for now. E-commerce is a more burning thing, and it needs a player. If we don't do it, somebody else will at some point. So that's how we sort of pivoted. We started doing e-commerce. And we've grown. I mean, what we thought has turned out to be true. Because we were there, a lot of the e-commerce companies have grown. Because there was a backend that they could ride on, e-commerce companies have become very, very large today, right? So it wasn't unnerving when we started, but there were moments of doubt along the journey. But I guess, again, keep your head down, keep executing, things will fall in place.
Interesting. Ankush, coming to you. Again, your business was very novel at its time, ahead of its time. Were there times you kind of felt that it's kind of nothing is going to work out, and were there moments when you got those jitters? How was it?
So I think as you mentioned, you're very young and you see your batchmates every day coming back and saying, oh, I'm not doing anything good. You realize that you're at least up to something. I think in our journey, we pivoted a lot. And we know, so we were first time engineers, MBAs working on food. So a lot of technology we wanted to put. And the whole idea behind that no one has challenged this industry so far is the oldest industry in the world. So there is Amazon to Walmart and all that, but nothing in food. So I think we pivoted. We started with Fasos on High Street. Then we realized that people don't even know where our store is. So we started something called as dark kitchens, which were very new. In fact, when I went to open Delhi market, my parents said no one is going to order from a place which is not visible. So over the time, we keep pivoting, we keep realizing, and the journey kept on changing. I think one time which was where we felt now we don't know what's going to happen. We were at 350 kitchens, we have 7,000 people on the field, is when COVID happened and everything was shut. But I think that was the only time where we never knew what's going to happen. Because we have perishable food, it's the whole people at risk. But other than that, I think it's been a fun journey. And still, there's a lot of 0 to 1 which keep happening. We keep launching brand. We got Wendy's to India. This is the first time Wendy's came partner with someone who's in cloud kitchen. And this is the fastest scale they could do ever in their history. So in 3 years, they've opened 150 locations. So I think the whole journey, the whole fun makes us keep going. Yeah.
Coming to you, Abhishek. I don't know whether I should really call you legacy because DTDC is, I think, 34 years old, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, you're a second generation entrepreneur. You came from a professional background. You were with Accenture. So what made you come back, join your family business? Was it pressure or you just wanted to?
Sometimes the best decisions people take when there is a lot of unfortunate things happening in the world. So I remember I was just fresh out of campus, spent about a year in the consulting space. And it was the era of the subprime crisis, India, and the whole world was in 2008, 2009, if you remember, was in a lot of turmoil, financially and otherwise. While I did not have any issues of my job being at risk, but there was something fundamental which triggered in my mind at that point. One, I was doing interesting work for which I was getting recognized, but the end result of that work is something that we as consultants don't, or people at that time, and still probably consultants don't get to see. You don't get to see the product. At the same time, of course, the business was there, and while there was absolutely no pressure from my father, our founder, to join the business, but when I looked at what we had been doing, and at a time when the company was possibly facing a lot of challenges, I thought, here is an opportunity where, if anything, we can only do better from here. It was rock bottom in some ways for Indian economy at that time, global economy as well. So I said, rather than being in a place where you might do interesting things but never get to see the end result of your work, you might as well work in a place where at least you can have a say in what happens, you can observe, you can learn, and ultimately, hopefully make impact. And if nothing else, it's friends and family, which means it's always going to be a lot of attention, love, care that you can find. And honestly, that was it. It was not something, and I never really thought whether I'll be 15 years down the line a CEO of the business, and I don't think my father ever said that you have to continue with it. It was just take one step after another. I think if you listen to all my colleagues over here, at all points in time in life, we've had challenges, but we always said just put the next foot after the other, and let's see where it goes.
What was that one big challenge when you took over?
See, I think the challenge was that we were trying to distinguish ourselves. I mean, Suraj, my colleague from our industry, knows that our industry is a very fragmented industry, and we've been around for a long time. When we started, we were a startup. It's just that startup was a bad word when my father started this company. Banks would not give you capital, let alone there was no VC culture, right? But the thing is, India was a very fragmented market in this space. And when I joined, I found that we were still one amongst many, rather than an organization that was really trying to step out and do something significant. So the big challenge that I worked along with my father, and I was lucky that I got that opportunity, was to create premiumization in our business. And that really allowed us to step away from the rest of the crowd. And, it's not that others' misfortune makes you happy, but just the fact that we're one of the only or the largest Indian origin multinational companies still present in this business means that we must have done something right in the last 15 years, which has allowed us to be where we are. So from that challenge to see where we are today, I think it's a whole journey that we have made. The whole industry has made it, but that time when we distinguished ourselves from the rest of the lot, I think was a critical point in the company, and more so in my personal journey as an individual.
Rishabh, I want to come back to you when, ever since I've been writing stories on the startup ecosystem, one thing I learned that failure, it's cool to fail. And if you fail, you only learn, and then you correct and then you go ahead, correct your mistakes. Is it cool to fail in a legacy company?
Yeah, I definitely. Hello. Yeah, I definitely think so. If you just look at even legacy business or even just the kind of startup ecosystem now, I think now failure is cool. I mean, one of the good things we got from the West right now is how we tolerate failure. So over there, failure, you write Harvard case studies, you write books, you make Netflix series, etc. out of it. And here, failure is perceived to be criminal in India. The founder has done some malfeasance, there's something shady, investigate him, CBI, EOW, etc. I think that has reduced substantially in India right now. I think people understand businesses fail. It's not because the founder is a bad person or the founder has done something naughty. It's that some economics don't work sometimes. So including in legacy, family-run businesses right now, they're very tolerant of failure. So as a trend, one thing that we do end up seeing is large old businesses who have multiple verticals, multiple family members as well. They have like a family office, for example. They have a family fund, which in a way acts as a seed incubator for their businesses in that way. Lots of companies that we've seen today who are sort of become big in their industry initially started with the NEXGEN doing something in their family office first. So we're seeing that trend play out, and If the businesses fail, okay, the family has lost some money, nobody's gone to jail, no bank is coming after you, no personal guarantee, etc. So I think that's a healthy trend we're seeing and encouraging entrepreneurship across the universe as well. Even today, a lot of businesses we see in legacy companies, like we have Ananya Birla coming in sometime. She's in microfinance first in the business. Aryaman is doing paints. Same thing is happening, Adani is doing defense when they were not doing something earlier. So that if the business fails, it fails. But I think ultimately the tolerance is there for that journey.
How is it in your case, Pranav? Is there room to fail? Because again, you would have gone through the challenge of convincing your family that, I want to get into D2C, want to get into a consumer-facing business. So was there room to fail?
I think failure generally is really essential for anybody to grow. I mean, if you don't fall, how do you even learn? And in the D2C, I just feel there is a lot of constant failure. Something that the B2B doesn't have, because when you're in the B2B business, you have, let's just say you tasted blood. So where money comes first and, everything starts later. But in the D2C, you have a big hole in your pocket and you are constantly questioning yourself that why am I doing this? If the wheel is not broken, why am I trying to reinvent it? But then again, if you don't adapt, if you don't change, how does it sustain in the future, right? The industry, basically when I entered, was always supplying to tobacco, right? And in tobacco, there is a lot of cash, there's a lot of money, but there's no visibility. So how does the industry get to a global stage? Like how do you turn Kannauj perfumery and tell the world that, okay, this is superseding France. They are still buying stuff from us. We are the ones that are exporting to most of the fragrances that you're using, right? But Indians would always have this thing that, okay, no, if it's coming from France, if it's coming from there, that's legit. Not knowing where the raw materials and where the back end, what the back end story is. So it's essential. Failure is really, really essential. And but yeah, like learn fast. You don't have the option. I mean, I feel that you don't have the option to fail multiple times. Also because there is not just your failure at stake, it's what you're carrying with you, the legacy that you're carrying with you. So yeah, that's what I think.
Suraj, I would come to you now and want to understand a little bit about culture, importance of culture in a startup like yours. So if you look at a legacy company, they have decades of strong culture. They're rooted in culture, and in fact, they have a problem of breaking, changing mindsets there. In your case, how do you build that culture? How do you build an organization? So when you kind of came into this, did you ever think that you would kind of create a culture and build an organization which would stand the test of time?
So culture is extremely important. Culture is important so that the person who's farthest away from the founders or the core team knows what to do in situation of doubt. That's what culture is, right? We don't have a culture document even today. We don't have defined values anywhere. But I think culture is defined by what leaders do. And I think we've tried to always lead by example. And we've so far been successful. So, whether it's getting your own hands dirty, being there on the ground literally every day, delivering shipments if need be, sorting parcels if required. I think we're always there, and that sets the tone of the organization. So whenever there is a need within operations for any kind of support, everybody is out there. Whenever new people join in, we make sure they first do a visit of the operations facilities, because that's what the business is all about. Even if you're in tech, you're building for operations. If you're in HR, you're hiring for operations. If you're in finance, you're making sure people in operations get the required money. So understanding operations is very critical. Doing it yourself to get that first-hand feel, I think, sets the tone. And so in the early days, we would scare people off saying, boss, 18 घंटे काम करना पड़ेगा. You won't be able to do it. And people will be like, नहीं करूँगा. They'd say, पैसे भी नहीं देंगे. नहीं, फिर भी करूँगा. So those are the people we ended up hiring. Some people dropped out because we did not want people to come in and treat this like any other job. Again, Abhishek just said that when his father started, startup was not cool. It wasn't cool even when we started, right? So it was some people really sort of wanted to come and be part of this mission with us. A lot of the early hires were actually within our network. So we were 5 founders. Each of us had our own friends. Some of the early hires were friends who knew that if one of us is there, we are doing the right thing, and they would spend time understanding it and say, I'm committing, I'm in. Obviously, in the long run, they've created wealth for themselves. We used ESOPs quite extensively. I think that's the other thing that I realized people don't use very effectively. I've spoken to a lot of startup founders where I tell them, "Kya ESOP do, matlab share wealth. There's enough to be created for everybody, but give your key people a lot of stock options. Let them also make a lot of money in the long run." So people took bets, joined us, created the right environment, led by example. The culture automatically became what it is, and we've never had any issues so far. But as we move on, if we at some point, as we start to move out of the active involvement in the company, we will have to create a culture document that defines what we stand for. But there are a bunch of people who imitate and live it every day. It's easy to create that document, right? So not a problematic area for us as such.
Ankush, when we were talking yesterday, one thing which stayed with me was you talked about you start a startup, you take it to a certain level, all that is fine, but the challenge comes when you scale it up to the next level. And that's when many organizations feel the need to hire a professional CEO. And so apart from hiring a professional CEO, what are the other things a startup like yours would look up to a legacy organization?
So I think one is, when we started up, we never started up for 10 years or 20 years. I think we started building for at least 100 years. And I think as a founder, there's a time when you move from what to who. I think, so we know till the time we're building in the first 10 years, now a lot of things are clear, what we're trying to build. Technology has helped us a lot. So now there are times when we think of, not at CEO level, maybe at other levels, that is it the right person, is the right skill? And I think, as Suraj mentioned, it's more on hiring culture. So I think it's more about the org than the person. So it's not about the founder, it's about the company we have built. So there are times when you have to hire professional CEOs because you feel that's the right for the org. I think that's how we think. And so far, I think I'm able to run, so it's good. But when the times come, it's always will be about who and what's right for Rebel, not for me. Yeah.
Do you see yourself replacing you with a professional CEO?
Yeah, I think till whenever the time comes, but I think it's always about org first. So we have hired people to do better on supply chain. We have hired people to do better in marketing. So I think in our journey, we keep looking at. But I think, as Suraj mentioned, it's more about who's coming, does it fit in the culture or not? Not at designation, not at this. I think it's a vision which we are building, and someone who was aligned with the vision, he understands how the values it and the culture. Just to add to his culture point, so we have 350 kitchens. We don't call our kitchen managers, we call them Chief Delight Officer. So they know their job is to delight the customers. So I think, and in past we have hired people from outside, so I think the only thing we always evaluate is the person a culture fit. So we have a bar is around where someone who's nothing to do with that role, interview that person and see that fits in that culture of the org or not. So I think when times come, obviously professionals will come in picture, but it's always about the org. And as a founder, our job is to always think who will do the best for the org.
Abhishek, coming to you, the one question I would like to ask you is about funding. So when it comes to family-run businesses, legacy businesses, the general mindset amongst people is, they're part of a large group, they're deep-pocketed, so they don't really need capital. So is it really true? Is it really easy if you're starting off on a new venture or foraying into a new vertical and you would need to raise money? Is it really easy for you because you're part of a family-run business? Do you find it difficult to kind of convince investors?
Interesting question, because I can only answer it from a little bit from my experience, but also what I see happening out there. So So in DTDC's case, the only capital raise we ever did was in 1990 when my father raised capital from my mother. She pledged her jewelry of 70,000 bucks to him. He went and gave it, and whatever money, whatever he could get from it. And ever since then, we have never really done a capital raise. But that doesn't mean we stop funding, which means every day, all of us in top leadership and all our management excoms and all our teams, we know that it's the business and the efficiencies that we build, it's the money that's going to get pumped back in, which is going to keep fueling growth. So from zero, where we were when I joined, and we've grown 6x since I've joined, and we've still not done a capital raise. But the question is this, whether you are raising capital as a family business or a legacy player, or you're raising capital as a startup enterprise, there will always be people asking you, why should we believe in your idea? What's the business case? Why does this make sense? And I'm sure all my colleagues here will agree that rigor can never go away. Your family business, assuming you're in one, whatever your company's wealth that is generated, is not your personal wealth. You're still a guardian of that wealth on behalf of shareholders. In some cases, you might be owning 99% of it or 100. Some cases you aren't. But you owe it not only to your shareholders, but also to your wider stakeholders, which is your employees, which is your partners, who need you to make the right choices, who need you to make those right investments. And you cannot play around with that. And I think my belief is, whether you're a legacy player, you take it seriously. And I'm sure startups who have to respond to quite hard-nosed financial investors have to do it. But it's the rigor. So if you've got the good rigor, you'll find people to back you and give funds to you. Or in case you're a little bit lucky, like we have been, find enough cash flows every year to keep pumping in and keep growing. But I think it's the rigor. And I'm sure all good businesses, their leaders focus on that rigor with not only themselves, but the entire team. That's been our philosophy. Thank you.
Pranav, how is it for you? Are you comfortable with capital, or how's it?
Growing up, that was never a question to raise capital from anybody. Maybe it comes with the pride, but of course, we did something in '83 where we set up an industrial unit for woven sacks but again, it was the government, it was a UPFC funded thing along with the bank, but never any VC or anything, because it's a family run thing, and you don't want any outsider. So you raise your own capital, you do your B2B grind, and you use the B2B to fund the B2C, which is what is happening. Very tough to do it when you see money going in B2C. But that's essentially what it is. And there's a lot of pride in a legacy business. So also the fact is that questions are going to be asked, right? To anyone, like be it a startup, be it a legacy business, the questions remain the same. I'm giving you money. What are you going to do with it? And they're hard, tough questions. So coming from a legacy business, you would just be like, what? Do you want me to answer? Like, we've been here for 200 years. So we're like, so what? It doesn't matter how long you've been. हमारे पैसे का क्या होने वाला है आगे? So best is कि अपना करो और खुद ही fund करो.
Rishabh, you had a perspective on that when we were talking this morning, and you were talking about family offices, as the challenges they face. So it'll be interesting to hear.
Yeah, sure. I kind of agree with what we were saying earlier. A lot of family-run companies now, they don't need the capital, but we are seeing a lot of trends where they want to kind of expand the business, grow the pie, sort of working with joint venture partners. We're seeing a lot of cases where legacy family businesses, for example, Escorts Kubota, 80-year-old family-run business. Recently, about 6, 7, 8 years ago, they bought a Japanese JV partner to grow in a new market. And it was an equity investment. It wasn't just being a supplier or something like that. So the many, many examples we are seeing right now were not for the need of capital, but to grow the pie, grow the business, grow the vertical. A lot of families want to kind of expand in it. And in a way, some of it also is de-risking the family from the business as well. Like we were saying, running the business for your stakeholders, your shareholders. So that's kind of a big trend playing out. The earlier zamana of reinvesting back in the business, every dividend flow was back in the company to buy new stock or kind of invest in the business again. That is reducing in some of the very large and very old businesses we are seeing. They're diversifying, like I mentioned in the earlier thing. They want to invest in the markets, in startup, LP funds, whatever, or they want to incubate a new business. So capital is going across these various buckets of requirements. And also we are seeing PE playing a big role in this whole situation. There are specialized PE funds in the West which only focus on family-run businesses, and they fund family disputes, they fund the family separating out, they fund sort of separation from a business where it's amicable as well. So they're kind of very focused, PE funds looking at this industry as well. And if you look at the conversation with Haldiram's right now, what's happening with Cipla, the family wants to get out of it and they want to bring in a friendly PE investor to kind of absorb that business and take it over, and part of strategic on the other side as well. So that's a trend we're going to see playing across a lot of the legacy businesses.
Suraj, coming to you, I wanted to hear from you as to how you retain talent. So kind of everyone, like in the good old days when the startups first started, everyone, would kind of want to join a startup because of ESOPs. ESOPs was a great, kind of puller, crowd puller. That does not exist anymore. ESOPs isn't really pulling crowds. So how do you attract good quality talent and then eventually retain them? What really is your strategy?
So I disagree when you say ESOPs is not a puller. ESOPs, there was a time in between when people had burnt their fingers, because a lot of the startup activity that began in 12, 13, 14, not all of them ended up surviving. So as companies died, people burned their fingers. They were skeptic about ESOPs. There was a time between 15, 16, around those years when people were a little skeptic about taking ESOPs as long-term wealth creation, and they said, "Boss, cash de do, apne ko ESOP nahi samajh mein aata hai." But I think that's changed now. We have so many examples of startups, companies that were startups which are now very large and have led to a lot of people making a lot of wealth for themselves. So ESOPs today is back as a big crowd puller. We use it very effectively. I promote, I keep telling people you should use it if you're a startup, if you're just starting out also. Ultimately, somebody is joining you for two things only, right? One is that they believe in the idea. The other is that they do want to, at the end of the day, create wealth, right? So only an idea will not get them unless you give them that opportunity to create wealth. Uske beyond, see, once people come in, if you give them high quality work, they'll stay. Wealth sub secondary ho jata hai, because everybody wants to go to an exciting place to work, right? You're spending such large part of your life at the workplace that you want that to be exciting. You want that to be intellectually stimulating, right? We started in an industry jisme koi nahi aana chahta tha. Nobody at that point ever said ki main, IIT se padh ke logistics mein jaunga ya IIM se padh ke logistics mein jaunga. But the fact that we created this and we started pulling in our friends to begin with and created the culture that attracted a lot of good talent, which continues to work with us today. There are people who've been with us for over 10 years. For a startup, for a company that's only 13 years old, greater than 10 years, so many senior employees being with us is a big thing. But they've stayed because we're giving them good quality work. We're giving them an environment where they're interacting with smart individuals. You feel like coming to work, having that conversation, thinking about how to solve the next big challenge, or even small challenges on an everyday basis, right? I think it's the quality of work that outrightly is the biggest influencer in anyone staying with you.
So I need to wrap up this.
Few words to that, I think just like 30 seconds. Hello. So I think this culture point is, I think, very important, because every situation we see where a new partnership is to be formed, a new investor coming in, entering into a new startup or a family-run business, the focus on culture is disproportionately and rightly so high. You do a culture diligence, you do a kind of culture match, you do in a way, a forensic on the founder and see what kind of person he is. The business may be great, but if the founder is not kind of, in the investor perception, not a good person, then the deal is sort of dead on the table. So I think culture becoming a very important factor for investors. And if you're seeing in the Indian ecosystem today, all these culture kind of problems happening in a number of the startups, I think that's a big and rightly so an important focus.
So as I come to the end of the conversation, Rishabh, I would quickly like to hear from you. Have you ever imagined running a bootstrapped startup?
No, I'm very much a family #Nepo kid. I like what I do in my family businesses. I can work with startups. All these guys can be clients, but I like to be in a legacy run business. That's my vibe.
Abhishek, what about you?
I kind of don't find the need, because I have the freedom to create new businesses within what we do. I think we are starting up every day. And that means that really, and that's for it's something that we say. We don't say we are 34 years old. We say we are 34 years young, and that means it's startup. It's what people say. It's day one every day. That's the culture for us, and therefore I have the freedom to keep starting up as much as I want within this business.
Pranav, have you ever imagined running a
I would just agree with everything Rishabh said. And also the fact, I feel like my B2C is my bootstrap startup. That's what it is. But yeah, I agree with everything he says.
Now, finally, our two startup founders, co-founders. Do you think being part of a legacy conglomerate would have made life easier for you?
It'll be boring. Yeah, I think, again, like, it's not my vibe. Like, since childhood, everyone knew that I'll do this. So it's always doing something which is, and that's how our name also came up. So yeah, I think for me it will be very boring. Yeah.
Suraj, what about you?
I don't think so. Yeah. So I think the fact that we were absolutely unaffected by any large company has allowed us to grow the way we've grown, because we could think independently, think completely outside the box. There were no rules. Let me put it that way, right? So we created our own rules, we created our own playbook, we played by our own rules, and we've done well. I think legacy businesses do have some sort of influence on how you start to think, at least. We had never had any of those.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these great insights, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.